Hey, hi, everybody. My name is Kathryn Kerby. Like we've already heard, I'm coming to you from the West Coast of the United States, where our day is just getting started. I know you folks are wrapping up your work day. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so I'll just get right to it. If you can go ahead and advance the slide. So a little bit about me. I have been a technical writer, either on staff somewhere or as a freelancer since 1990. Yes, that means that when I first got started in my career, we were using typewriters. User guides came in the form of 3-ring binders. I was still using whiteout. It was it was pretty primitive by our standards today. And that actually, I believe, puts me in kind of a unique perspective of being able to comment on this massive new technology advancement into the world of AI. A lot of people, the first thing they ask me is this going to cost me my job? And I can confidently say, it is not going to cost you your job per se, but it is probably going to require that you evolve, that you are going to develop some new skills. And that's what today is all about, giving you the backstory as well as how to go use it. So I got started in the sciences. My degree is in environmental sciences, and I have been there for most of my career. But I also did a stint working for a software company. That gave me some understanding of the background that we'll be talking about today: computer programming, software development, how software development projects are rolled out to the public, sometimes before they're really ready for prime time. But I will be talking today about that AI and how it impacts the work that we do, specifically from my own background in terms of using it. Now, when AI first came along, like a lot of folks, I kind of looked at it like, oh boy, this is going to be not a good thing. And even if you can go ahead and advance the slide, I actually did not really pick it up and run with it by choice. In early 2023, I had a client. At that time, I was doing a lot of renewable energy stuff for this client, and I was one of a group of freelancers. They categorically told us, you are not allowed to use AI. We are going to be testing your materials. We're going to be asking you to prove that you wrote what you claim that you wrote. And anybody that we catch using AI in any way, shape, or form is going to be dropped on the spot. So that's one extreme. On the other hand, go ahead, Eva, and advance the slide. I then had a client early this year who took exactly opposite tack. They had a project that was frankly underfunded and on the fast track to just get it out the door. They said, any AI tool that you can use to speed this up, please do so. That began my crash course in learning how to use AI for every possible freelance task, whether it is content creation or managing my business on the back end. I was playing with it. I was using it. I was trying to break it. I was trying to push it as far as I could so that I could speed that project up, and generally so that I could be more efficient. That has landed us to a scenario today where I am being asked, and you will face this at some point, where you will be asked, what can AI do for us? My job here today is to help you become the expert in the room, because frankly, most clients don't know much about what AI can or cannot do. They will sometimes come to you saying, don't you dare use it. They will sometimes come to you saying, we want you to use it. I want to equip you with the competency of knowing when you can and cannot use it and how to make it as effective as possible. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide. So let's take
I'll just make sure that, because Annette mentioned that slides are not advancing, I just want to make sure that we're looking at the same thing. Is it the AI slide?
Yes, yes, we are.
Perfect.
Yes, this one,
so
just,
this is perfect.
This one just advanced. Yes, it just advanced.
And Eva, it seems to be keeping up with when I requested. So I think it's working just fine. So I think we're good. Okay, so let's take a step back and answer the question, what exactly is AI? Artificial intelligence can collectively mean a lot of different things. anything from robotics to content creation to gaming, so on and so forth. We are going to restrict our conversation today to content creation for the most part, but I wanted to give you some context. Artificial intelligence is generally any sort of computerized decision making. When we go down one level, we get a little bit more complicated into what's called machine learning. That's where some sort of computer is making choices. Sometimes it's very simple, either or. Sometimes it's choosing from a list of options. Usually it's involving sensors or input of some kind. If this, then that. You go down a little bit deeper into more complex systems and you're getting into what's called neural networks. That's when you have multiple variables that all interact in some way. And that's when you start getting into the really intense computing power that requires a lot of electricity. We're not going to address that today, but that's when you start to get into multiple variables going into a decision system and multiple potential options coming out of that system. When we dial it in finally to content creation, that's when we're talking about something called large language models. That's where a computerized system has been trained, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about this, trained on a great volume of written material so that it knows something about the context, not only of grammar and syntax, but also in terms of natural language, how we complete a sentence based on a lot of different elements. That's where things get really, really complex. And on the good side, that's why AI can create natural language sounding sentences. But on the other hand, that's why sometimes it gives us really bizarre natural language sounding sentences. So that's really kind of the crux of what we're going to be learning about today. Okay, Eva, go ahead and advance it, please. Okay, so a little bit more detail. The machine learning is a subset of AI. The deep learning is a subset of machine learning. And the large language models are a subset of all of that. Okay, now when we talk about ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Poe or Claude or any of the other tools that you might be learning specifically for content generation, those are collectively known as large language models. They're called large language models because they have been trained on enormous databases of natural language. Go ahead, Eva, and advance that if you would, please. And actually, go ahead and advance it one more. I think, okay, yeah, now we're caught up. Okay. Large language models are trained on massive amounts of data. If you think about every book in every library in the world, that's the kind of data set we're talking about. Now, you may or may not realize a lot of the books that have been published to date from the very beginning of the printing press up to last year's titles have been digitized. That body of knowledge is what's being used to train AI, okay? And when I say AI, in this case, I mean large language models. That introduces problems, though, because sometimes materials that are inaccurate or out of date or obsolete or simply irrelevant are being included in that training. So go ahead and advance the slide, please. Now, just to give us a little bit of context, we've actually been using AI for quite a while now. Every time you go and use a search engine, for instance, Google or Microsoft Bing or Mozilla Firefox, every time you type in a search query, it's using artificial intelligence in the background to bring you those results. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide. Unfortunately, this first generation of AI was bringing you everything. That's why you would sometimes get page after page after page of results, and you would have to go wade through all those results to find what you really need. Go ahead and advance the slide. Now, we got fairly adept over the last few years to finding what we wanted, but we still had to dig for it. Sometimes we had to dig quite a bit. The AI search engines were getting better and better at giving us very carefully curated results that were relevant to our search terms. And by the same token, we got better with our search terms. Instead of just typing in 1 or 2 word search phrases, we would type in entire sentences. That was kind of laying the groundwork for the work that we're doing now. What we're going to do now is learn about how AI is upping the game in terms of refining not only the results that it gives us, but also reducing the amount of digging that we have to do so that we get the results that we want. So let's go ahead and take a look at how AI is now doing that. And we're going to pretend that we're doing a search in this instance for finding out who is the current president of Colombia. So go ahead and advance the slide, please. When we use Bing Chat, what we would do is we would type in, who's the president of Colombia? And it would give us page after page after page of the results finding who is the president of Colombia. Maybe it would be a Wikipedia, maybe it would be a official presidential election result, maybe it would be news accounts, maybe some of those would be outdated. When we add large language models to that processing, for example, Bing Chat in this example, what it's going to do is filter through all those results and give us a single sentence giving us the answer that we wanted. Okay, so we start off in the upper left-hand corner of this graphic when we ask who is Colombia's current president. Bing performs a web search and it extracts all the top results of that web search, and then it combines them into a unified, consistent, natural language result, which is then put over into this pink area on the right where you see the question that you asked, and it gives you the answer that a web search found the following relevant context from Wikipedia, as well as from New York Times. The recent election in Colombia resulted in Francisco Petro Urrego being elected. Okay, that would then be kind of the mechanism for how AI is providing us with search results put into a natural language system. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide. Now, I talked a little bit about how it gets that information. Published books that have been digitized. But what else is happening is websites, all sorts of websites from business, from government agencies, from nonprofits. Social media platforms are being searched for information. News outlets are being searched for information. And one of the ethical concerns that has come to light is that some of the training databases have used copyrighted behind paywall news articles that shouldn't be accessible, but they have been gathered, and that has been used to train these large language models. Others include magazines, trade journals, and other specialty publications. Again, that is sometimes by subscription only. And the whole question of whether AI training should have access to this copyrighted material is something that has not yet been determined. There are numerous lawsuits about that. To my knowledge, none of those have been decided yet. What some of the companies are doing, like OpenAI, which produces ChatGPT, they are entering into licensing agreements with various publishers and various news or organizations so that they do have access. That is not uniform, but that is one of the cutting edge developments in how to train AI. Go ahead and move the forward a little bit more. Now, from the point of view of quality control, it's important to remember that all of this information is being put into what's called a data lake, where every piece of information is roughly equivalent to every other piece of information in terms of being considered accurate. And that's part of the problem. There's no weighting being given. There's no, this is correct, that is not evaluation being done behind the scenes. So all of this volume of information is being considered equally. And that's why sometimes we're having problems with AI giving us irrelevant or biased information. And I'm going to talk more about that here in a little bit. Go ahead and advance the slide. Okay. Now, how does AI sort out all of the information in this data lake? Let's consider an example of a sentence, "The cat is hiding in a bag." Now, AI starting off doesn't know what a cat is. It doesn't know what a bag is. It doesn't know what the verb to hide means. It's trained on inconceivably large numbers of sentences and paragraphs and stories and news articles. And as part of that training, it starts to develop this idea of what a cat is and an idea of what a bag is and the various physical characteristics of each. It starts to learn about what is hiding. What would the bag hide in the cat, or would the cat hide in the bag? These are not being taught in terms of programming per se. These are being taught in terms of word association. So where the word occurs in the sentence and an understanding of how grammar works is how AI learns. Go ahead and advance the slide, please. Once the AI model can identify each element in a sentence, then it can start to put those sentences together. But one of the critical concepts today to remember is that it works on a basis of association. It does not work on a base of factual cognitive understanding. So for instance, it will see references over and over and over again to cats. It will see references over and over and over again to putting things into bags. And it will find references of somebody or something hiding from somebody or something else. And it starts to associate just by sheer statistics that when you have a cat and you have a bag, you will, from some fraction of time, have cats hiding in bags. Not because of factual accuracy, but because of word association. So go ahead and advance the slide. That's one of the critical problems with AI, and it's something that we have to keep in our mind at all times. AI is not giving us factually accurate information. It is giving us plausible information. Could the cat be hiding in the bag? Sure. Is the cat hiding in the bag? We don't know. AI doesn't know. It is simply saying something that is plausible. Okay, go ahead and move forward, please. So when we are talking to clients about using AI, when we are thinking about using AI, this is the single biggest thing we have to keep in mind, that whatever we get from AI is plausible, but it is not necessarily accurate. It is not necessarily correct. That is why fact checking has got to go hand in hand with using AI content creation, because we can never be sure that AI has given us factually accurate information. We can only be sure that it gave us a plausible, generally grammatically correct sentence, although sometimes the grammatically correct is not exactly accurate either. We can always go back and look and do our fact checking, but that is something that we have got to do. The more factually accurate our materials need to be, the bigger the role the fact checking needs to be. Okay, if you don't remember anything else from this class, take that one home. Okay, you can advance the slide, please. So what are the golden rules? How can we possibly work with AI with a clean conscience, given that limitation? First, we learn how to create prompts that are most likely to give us not only relevant, but accurate information. And I'll be showing you how to do that in a little bit here. Secondly, the less familiar you are with a topic, the more carefully you need to check AI-generated content. And I'll give you some examples of that shortly. Third, the more important it is to be factually accurate, the less appropriate it is to use AI. So what do I mean by that? Okay, let's say that we have 2 assignments in front of us. We need to create some sales brochures for one client. We need to create a news article for another client, a news article or even a financial report or an investor meeting, so on and so forth. On the one hand, the brochure, that's fairly cookie cutter language. We want to portray a product as better, cheaper, faster, whatever for our clients. That is something that AI can create very, very quickly with very little room for error. And if there are errors, they're fairly easy to spot. And frankly, if there's an error in the brochure, it's not a huge cost either to us or to the client. Yes, we want to make sure that we send out correct information, but a sales brochure is fairly low risk. Compare that with a news article or with an investor report or a financial report for government agency reporting. We have got to be accurate for everything that we say in those documents. So where do we use AI? It would be relatively safe to use it for a sales brochure. It would be relatively risky to use it for a news article, for a financial report, for an investor report, unless we do a lot of fact checking. Okay, those are the 3 golden rules. Now, if we are unfamiliar with using sales brochures, if we are unfamiliar with writing financial reports, when push comes to shove, it's faster to write things the old-fashioned way where we just go in and we do our research and we write out what we find. It's faster to do it on topics that we're not familiar with than to let AI do it, because we spend so much time fact-checking materials we don't know that we lose the advantage of that time savings of having AI create it for us to begin with. Okay, so that's the second really important thing to take from this class. When you talk to clients on how to save time, you want to make sure that you're focusing the AI where it can save you the most time and not chewing up a lot of time by using it on something that you're going to have to go back and fact check it anyway. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide. So let's talk about how we can go ahead and use AI responsibly. If we're not going to use it for the really meaty items, where can we use it? Well, we can use it to prospect for clients. We can use it to create article outlines. We can use it to generate questions about a topic that we might not have thought about yet. We can use it to create first drafts of a larger article. We can use it to create first drafts of anything and then go back and review. We can use AI to take a single document in a single format and convert it into something else, sometimes into a lot of other things. For instance, say that we have a very data-dense white paper. We can use AI to pull out the 3 or 4 major points of that white paper, put them into a summary, put them into a PowerPoint, put them into a blog post. We can use AI in a lot of ways that does not run the risk of factual inaccuracies, but it does make the most of all of the AI automation advantages so that we're not chewing up a lot of time doing busy work. Okay, that's how AI can really save us time. If we have, say, 8 topics or 8 assignments, and 6 of them are really kind of mundane, just go get it done, the 6 of them we could do in an hour, leaving 7 hours of our day for the other 2 assignments that are going to take the time and are worth taking the time. That's how AI can help us out. And in our second class, I'll be providing exactly that. I'll be providing basically a day's worth of work and how to use AI to get through it quickly. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide, please. Now, when we talk about using AI in the context of content creation, it all comes down to the prompt. The prompt is our set of instructions for what we want the AI to do. And for most cases now, that is written out. There are now some verbal AI prompts, but I'm not going to get into that because that's a little bit off into the weeds, into the sidelines of our main topic here. Let's go forward and just look at how to create AI prompts, but with one caveat. The better your prompt, the better your results. And the corollary is true. The worse your prompt, the more vague, the more general, any sort of assumptions, any sort of bias that are in your prompt are going to show up in your results as well. So if I can predict one way, one massive way that AI is going to change our assignment, or excuse me, is going to change our work, we're going to go from being writers of the final product to being writers of the prompt and then editing the final product for brand voice, for tone, for audience, for accuracy, for consistency with other materials. That's how AI is going to change our jobs. But let's first learn about how to do a prompt. Go ahead and advance the slide. Learning to create a good prompt is a work in progress. And yes, it takes practice. It might seem like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to learn this. I've put together a lot of supplemental materials that I'm going to be sharing with you after the class. A good fraction of them are guides, plural, to how to create good prompts. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it today. I'll show you some examples, but just know that you will have a lot more material after the class to work with if this concerns you at all. Frankly, this really intimidated me when I got started, but it came quickly. And it's gotten now to where I can write out a prompt so quickly that I definitely save time in terms of writing out what I would have written out by scratch before. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide. So let's take a test scenario. Nothing beats learning by example. Okay, let's say that we want a blog post on EV sales in the European Union. And our client has come to us saying, yeah, I'd like a blog post about EV sales in Austria for 2023, because that's the last year we have data. Now, if we were sloppy or careless or rushed, and we didn't care about the relevancy of what we got, we might just put in a prompt that says, yeah, create a blog post about Austrian EV sales in 2023. Let's take a look at what that would give us. Go ahead and advance the slide. This is the actual output that I got from ChatGPT when I put in that exact prompt. And it's actually not bad. The highlighting is from ChatGPT. I didn't do that. And it gave me the layout. I didn't do that part either. So I'm not going to worry about letting you go through all this. This is also going to be in the supplemental materials. But suffice to say, this gave us actually a fairly good blog post. It's, roughly 700 words long, which is a nice meaty blog post, but it wasn't quite as dialed in as our hypothetical client wanted. So go ahead and advance the slide. They came back to us and said, we actually want it to do a little bit more than that. The client wants us to narrow in on the sale of EVs in Austria versus Norway, namely because Norway is at the head of EV sales. Furthermore, the client wants the blog to discuss the factors that influenced those differing sales volumes. So let's modify our prompt. Now we're going to give it a second sentence. Create a blog post about EV sales in Austria versus Norway in 2023, and include a description of the factors that influenced those differing sales volumes. You see how we're really starting to dial this in? Go ahead and advance the slide. Ooh, it gave us a whole lot more detail, didn't it? Now we're seeing, and again, I didn't do any of the formatting in this. This is the raw product from ChatGPT. It addressed those two countries right there in the title. It gave us key statistics right away. I didn't actually ask for it to do that. And it gave factors influencing that divergence, and it broke down those different factors, and it gave each of those factors a breakdown according to the countries that we were interested in. Okay, now we're getting some really actually pretty good material. Go ahead and advance the slide. Then our client comes back one more time. How many times have we had this happen where the client asks for something each time it's a little different? Now they want to know, okay, break out and compare the sales among different manufacturers. compare purchases between homeowners versus renters, because that is coming to light to be a major decision process, it's a differentiation for EV buyers. And refine the language so that it's suitable for, now we finally find out our audience, who happens to be, in this case, EU policymakers. And they want to boost the sales in Austria, so they want to know what the differences are. How does this change our prompt? Go ahead and advance the slide. This is our final prompt. We've included 5 different elements: our original statement, the original, what are the factors for the sales volumes in the 2 countries, break out the different manufacturers, break out homeowners versus renters, and put the language in terms of EU policymakers, as opposed to, say, new EV buyers or EV enthusiasts or whatever. Okay, so now we've really dialed this in as much as our client wants to. Go ahead and advance the slide. Now we have extremely detailed information that covers all of those topics. That's the difference between giving a general prompt and a very carefully dialed in prompt. And I will take a moment here to say that the hypothetical client coming back to us with more and more detail is not so hypothetical. You've all probably had examples of clients who say, yeah, just give me this and it'll be fine. And then you give them that, and then they come back with, no, wait, I want this. And then, no, wait, I want that. AI is wonderful for rendering more and more different versions of the same general concept. That's one of the ways that we can really save time with this. So if you've got a client that drives you crazy with asking for 5 different variations of something, yes, AI can help you with that. But a word to the wise, put limits on the client saying, okay, you only get to modify this 2 or 3 times, if that, because they're going to be chasing this around forever if you don't put limits on it, because some of the clients now know that you can do that. Don't give them that room to maneuver. Give them a certain number of revisions that they can make so that they don't keep you busy chasing something down that is always moving. Okay, go ahead and move the slide forward, please. So in summary, the more specific your prompt is about your needs and intentions, the closer your results will be to what you wanted. The time you put into crafting a good prompt will come back to you in the form of time you don't need to spend editing the result. Even the best prompt cannot replace the need to verify your results. So all of the details that we got from that final version, we need to go back and check all of those. Because I'm already in the EV space, I was able to look through that. It's like, wow, yeah, that's okay. That's exactly what I wanted. If I were new to EVs, if I were new to the European Union sales patterns, I'd need to go back and check more carefully. For unfamiliar topics, the time you save with even the best prompt may very well be consumed by editing the results. So that's where you're going to have to make the decision on whether to use AI or not. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide. So another example for how we can use AI is with an article outline. And I'm going to start to kind of zoom this up so that we have time for questions at the end. Go ahead and advance. Let's say that we want to create an article outline that looks like this. We want it to focus on the development of solid-state rechargeable batteries. We want to know the manufacturers who are in that category. For each of those, we want breakout of what they've recently done and what obstacles they've encountered. Have they started to offer their products or announced plans to do so? And if we have dates, please list those as well. So go ahead and advance. Okay, this is what it gave us, a brief introduction, and then it starts to break out by company, and within each company it talks about breakthroughs, obstacles, and commercialization. This, again, is not something I formatted. This was the raw output. What I have found is that sometimes it takes longer to reformat the formatting that the AI gave me than it did to actually generate the prompt. But I've also found that I can do some of that now with Copilot from Microsoft. So if that is something that you are interested in, we're not going to cover that today, but Copilot can do a lot of this formatting for you. I will let you explore that on your own. Go ahead and advance the slide. Okay, let's look at another way that we can use AI in terms of prospecting for clients. Here again, what do we want to know? We want to know, or we want to specify the niche and even the sub-niche that we're in. We want to have the result give us back the company type, the size, the company sales, and any other company characteristics that are important to our work. So go ahead and advance the slide. Okay, in this instance, this is one of my niches, pollution cleanup. I want to work with a consulting agency. I want them to have 50 or more employees and be making 50 million per year, because I find that if they are not working at that level, they probably don't have a budget for me anyway. So why waste the time contacting them? And then I want them to be working along the Pacific coast of the United States, because that's what I'm most familiar with. Let's go up and down the main continental United States. That's fine, Eva. That's fine. So that's what the prompt would look like. A note here, we can put our prompts into any layout that makes it easier for us to read. So far, I've been putting it in list format. Here, I put it in paragraph format. The AI tool doesn't generally care. Now, I will say that with one caveat. Some of the specialty AI tools that get into creating specific products like brochures will follow a specific format where it asks for this information in this little window. But for the general tools like ChatGPT or Gemini, whatever form works for you works for that engine. So just experiment with what's easier for you. Okay, go ahead and advance it again. Okay, here's what that most recent prompt gave us. It started to list the companies, where they're headquartered, what their focus is, that their revenue meets my criteria, as well as their details, so that I can see if it's a client that I want to mess with. We can't see all the results on this particular screen, but in this instance, the results came back with at least 10 different companies. One of the tools that I've learned to use is that when I want at least a certain number of results, I tell it that I want at least 10 or at least 5 or at least 20, whatever the count is. Sometimes prompting it that way gives AI a reason to dig a little deeper so that we have better results. For instance, if I'm looking for clients, I want as many results as I can find. But if I'm writing a blog post and I just need a few samples, I limit it to 3 to 5 because I don't want to overwhelm the reader. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide. Okay, now what about working with bigger articles? Some of you will have already seen that ChatGPT and Gemini, the free versions, have limits on how long any given piece of output can be. There's a way to work around that. Let's say that we want to go back to our article outline and start to build that outline using AI for content creation. Go ahead and advance the slide. Okay, so from our prior article outline, we asked it to come up with who's involved in the solid state battery space. And we take the first company that was listed, namely Toyota Motor Corporation, and their recent breakthroughs, obstacles, and commercialization. Let's say that our client really liked that outline and they want us to start fleshing it out. What we can do is pick any one of these little bullet point items and work with that to build just a part of this final article. So go ahead and advance the slide. Let's say that we chose the bullet point, developed a prototype solid-state battery with faster charging and longer range. But we also need some more details now that we're actually generating content for this portion of the article. We'll also need some background information so that the AI tool knows who we're writing for and why. Go ahead and advance it again. So our prompt might look something like this. Create a 200-word essay. Notice that we're telling it how much we need on how Toyota has developed a prototype solid-state battery with faster charging and longer range. That's one of our bullet point items. Focus on how Toyota has been competing against other EV makers to get this development to market as quickly as possible, and how this would give them a market edge. Notice how we're starting to really dial in the focus on the article now. Use language that is appropriate for investors who are interested in supporting renewable energy. One of the best ways that we can really dial in the quality of the results that we get is to tell the search engine or tell the AI generation engine who we're talking to, who's our audience, what are they looking for, why do they care? That will dramatically change the language we get back. And then lastly, provide information on how this development could impact Toyota's stock prices and market share. Since we're going for investors, that's something they're going to want to know. So let's see what the prompt gives us. Go ahead and advance the slide. This is the raw output. I stripped out all the formatting because I was getting tired of working with it. So what I generally do sometimes is I take the output from ChatGPT, I put it into a note editor like Notepad that strips out all the formatting, and then I copy and paste that into Word or whatever word processing document I'm working with. And that way I can put the formatting on it that I really want. And in this case, I just wanted something very straightforward. So again, you'll have access to this in the supplemental resources. But as you can see, we are talking exactly to an investor community who wants to know, do they want to invest in Toyota because of Toyota's advancements, or would their investment money be better spent somewhere else? This is how we really dial in the results that we're getting, is by giving as many detailed instructions in the prompt that we can possibly think of. This also helps nip it in the bud for clients who don't like the tone, don't like the focus, whatever. We get as much detail from the client in advance as we can, so that we only have to do this drafting business once or twice to really get the results that we want. Okay, go ahead and advance it. Now, some cautionary words. I'm going to move through these pretty quickly, but these are the problems with AI that I have already referenced. Let's look a little bit in more detail. Go ahead and advance it. Bias. If you think about how AI is trained, all the books, all the magazines, all the newspapers, all the social media, does bias creep in? Oh, absolutely. Unfortunately, a lot of our language includes bias, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. Sometimes we're not even aware of what's come to be known as dog whistle terms. Dog whistle in this context meaning that it might seem like an innocent phrase to one community, but to another community, it is a great big red flag of bias. AI is really, really struggling with that right now. And I don't see, my personal perspective is that it's going to continue to struggle because of the way that AI is trained. We can't go back and take out every example of bias in the data lake that we trained it on. Therefore, it's going to be in the results that we get. Our jobs as freelancers, expect it, watch for it, get rid of it. Be acutely aware of the audience that you're writing for and what they're sensitive to, what they're concerned about, and get rid of any offensive content before it ever sees the light of day. That's the single best protection I can recommend, because AI is going to continue to spit this out because that's what it's been trained on. And we can't take that out of the data lake now because we can't find all of the examples. So we have to find the examples in our own work. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide. Now, here was something bizarre. AI repeatedly, consistently gets dates wrong. That blew my mind. I mean, if you think about it, okay, a certain item was invented on a certain date. There's a patent record for it. There's a news article about it. How can you possibly screw that up? AI screws it up. I found this when I was working on a history of agriculture textbook for middle school kids, and I wanted to create a timeline of agricultural developments. When was cheese invented? Okay, when was the cotton gin invented? When was this or that invented? And I consistently found that AI could come up with those elements that this cool thing in agriculture had been invented, but a full 1/3 of the time, if not more, it got the dates wrong. Because think about how AI is trained. All of those data sources, some of them are going to be right. Some of them are going to be wrong. AI has no way to differentiate. It's going to give us a plausible answer, but that plausible answer may be an incorrect answer. One specific example, Bioengineering. There was a case in the United States with something called Starlink corn back in the late 1990s, where Starlink was a variety that was bioengineered. It was not approved for release into food products, but lo and behold, they found it in food products because it was accidentally released. I won't get into the hows and the whys. AI tried to tell me that that happened in the mid 1960s. Bioengineering wasn't happening in the mid 1960s. It actually happened, they think, 1998, 1999, so that test results in 2000 were the first to find it in the food supply. AI gave me a plausible answer, but it was dramatically incorrect. I had to go back and look at all of my year and date pieces of information that I got for that timeline and correct roughly a third of them. If you are relying on AI to generate historical events, probably happened, although you need to check that too. There are cases of fake history events creeping in now. We'll talk about that in a minute. Absolutely check your dates, because do not rely on AI for the dates being accurate. Okay, go ahead and advance it. Hallucinations, you might have heard of that. What in the world is hallucination? That's when AI gives us a very plausible sentence that is not real. It is not accurate. It's not even remotely close. 2 examples. Google's Gemini advised users to eat more fiber by eating small rocks. Okay, that's not going to work very well. It also advised, in a different prompt and answer, it advised users that they could prevent the cheese from sliding off their pizza by using a little bit of glue. Okay, yeah, that would work. No, it's not real, or it's not reasonable to do that, but yes, it would have worked. Both of these are plausible. Neither of these are appropriate. One of the things that got a lot of attention is how, oh my God, they're giving us wrong information. What did not get attention in the news outlets was the prompt that created the result. For the rocks comment, the prompt that started off, I should have quoted it here. I didn't actually get the quote, but it was something to the effect of, how many rocks should I eat per day? And for the pizza, it was, should I put glue on my pizza? It gave the answer that followed from the absurdity of the prompt it started with. So that's another golden rule. If you start with an absurd premise, it's going to give you an absurd response. Both of these came up in testing where people were giving it really goofy prompts to see what it would do. And what do you think it did? It gave goofy results. Word to the wise. Sometimes we can inadvertently give it bizarre prompts. It's just we're getting sloppy, we're getting tired, or we're using a word combination where we don't sit and think about the implications, and it'll give us a bizarre result. That's not the failure of the AI. That is the AI working from where we started. So go back, review your prompt, change the prompt, you'll get different results. But always be on the lookout for answers that don't make sense. They are not automatically correct. They are just pulling information out that's plausible. Go ahead and advance the slide. One of the ones I wish we could dive into, but we won't have time for, is this whole issue of fake history. Now, the United States has a number of publications that are widely accepted as satire. The Onion is one of the best known. The Onion has been in operation for decades, and it will take news articles and write satire copies of those news articles, and I've given one example here. Unfortunately, that publication, amongst others, was tapped for training AI. Nobody differentiated it in terms of, by the way, this is satire, this is not real. So AI engines were trained believing that these articles are real. That introduced into the AI training data lake fake history that is now being talked about as being real. If you are asking AI for historical context on something, check it. Most of the time, it will be accurate, but some of the times you're going to get a reference. It's like, what? That's when you really need to check. You've got to be on top of that fact checking because it's going to come back and get you if you don't. Okay, go ahead and advance it. And that brings us to this final thing of, if you use AI, for every amount of time that you put into creating the prompt, you have got to also go back and put in twice as much time to do the fact checking. Make it a habit. Make it a rule. If your clients push back, no, you don't need to do that, you can show them all sorts of information that says, oh, yes, I do. And you can give them examples like I've provided here, because clients don't know any better. A lot of clients just hear AI can save us time and money, so they tell you to go use it. You are going to have to be the expert in the room. And you're going to have firm guidelines for what you are willing to do, because clients will push that boundary. The best you can do is say, if you do that, you are opening yourself up for inaccuracies and potential liabilities. And if they want to do it, that's their call, but you don't have to be the one putting your name on it. That's your call. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide. That leads us to this. By the end of this presentation, where you fall on the willing or not willing to work on AI may or may not have changed. Wherever you are is fine. That being said, you will have clients that are somewhere else on that spectrum. That's their call. You are going to have to navigate how to find clients that are in approximately the same place on that spectrum as you are, and how to talk to clients who aren't. What I would recommend, being in this business for 30 years plus, if you can find clients that are on the same general part of the spectrum, more power to you. Prepare for clients who aren't. Figure out in advance how to diplomatically approach this proactively. Don't wait for them to bring it up. I'm even finding out about freelance writers who are putting this right into their contracts. Prior to accepting work, they put in there, I will use AI, I will not use AI. If this is a question or a problem, we need to talk about it in advance of any work accepted or received. That's the best approach I can think of, because that gets it out in the open right away. Okay? But you are ultimately the one who decides what you are or are not comfortable with. I have walked away from assignments because of this. And I have had clients walk away from working with me because of this. That is part of the work. There are other clients out there who are closer to wherever you are on this particular spectrum. Okay, go ahead and advance it. I've mentioned a couple of times supplemental information. I will have that ready shortly after our class. We'll have to get it set up in some group file. I will work with Eva for that, but you will have a lot of additional information coming that will give you a lot more background information. One more time, advance the slide. Now, questions. We're coming right up on 9:30 my time. I know that this ran late. We had a little bit of technical hiccups in the beginning, but I'm ready to answer questions. If you would like to stay late to ask them, go right ahead.
Well, I would like to say you gave an awesome presentation. I enjoyed it to the fullest.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. I did want to mention that I also, one of the points that you made, I love the fact that you're saying fact check everything, because
yes,
you know, it's not real, it's plausible, as you mentioned, use the word plausible. Because I remember attending another workshop similar, and they also mentioned how, just as you stated, that it's plausible versus fact, a lawyer presented something from it and was now barred from being a lawyer because he didn't check it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a very, very valid point of your entire presentation, is to let us be aware that we need to fact check what we're doing on ChatGPT.
Yes.
So thank you.
I started off in a newsroom, and we had it drilled into our heads. If it's not accurate, it doesn't go out the door. And we would stay there late, just to make sure we got every last little piece of information accurate. And my next assignment was working on environmental site assessments for companies buying or selling large industrial properties. Our work, our documentation had to stand up in court as evidence. So that was another high pressure. Every fact has to be correct. So when I saw AI spitting out some of the drivel that it creates, I thought, oh my God, this is a mess. And if that's the one thing you take away, then good, because that's the one biggest, scariest part of this whole thing, is that if it comes from AI, it's going to be considered accurate, and it's not. Anybody else with questions?
Come on, don't be shy. Otherwise, the next opportunity is next week, same time next week, but you can still ask a question today.
Kathryn, can I ask something, please?
Absolutely.
When you submit something into an AI tool, maybe it's something that you've written yourself, does that then join the lake?
Oh my gosh, that is an excellent question. And yes, it does, with some caveats. Let me see if I can do a really concise answer to this. When we generate information that goes out into the public domain, and by public domain, I mean any written materials that we use, that we put on a website, that we publish, even if it's behind a paywall, that will eventually join the data lake. The data lake sync up is not in real time. There are batches of releases that are done, and sometimes, depending on the AI tool that you're using, it will tell you, I have data up to a certain date. Those dates are getting closer and closer. When I first started to work with ChatGPT and Gemini, it would tell me, okay, I have, and this was early 2024. God, it seems like years ago. So earlier this year, I would start with some query, and it would tell me, okay, I only have information up to 2022. I thought, wow, okay, 2 years. Well, that's pretty current relatively. And then as I progressed a month or two, it would tell me, okay, I only have reports up to 2023. So now we're within a year. Earlier this year, like a couple of months ago, I did another search. Now it's up to this year. So now we've only got a sync up time within a few months. That interval is getting shorter and shorter. So yes, our results are starting to be included in the data lake. One article I just recently read, not only are the results being included in the data lake, our prompts are being included in the data lake as more training for the AI. You may have seen a lot of jobs out there for freelancers. Come help us train AI. Part of that training is to refine the prompt issue of how to understand the prompt, how to give back results based on the prompt. So both your prompt and the output, which is maybe your final writing product, are being included in that data lake. And the delay between having it produced and having it join the data lake is getting shorter and shorter. So I hope that answered your question. Yes and yes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just kind of shows like there's almost greater convergence in a way of thinking, potentially.
And that actually creates another problem of generalization of results. There are concerns that so much information is being dumped into AI that was already AI generated, that the results are going to become very homogenized. And there is concern that with each iteration of AI training, the results are going to be more and more uniform so that we don't get any unique voice. And that's the other way that I know that we are not going to lose our jobs to this. We are already approaching a point where human created content has a unique flavor that AI content is less and less able to achieve because of exactly that. AI is now training AI, but AI can only train AI to be AI. It can't train it to be human. So our uniqueness has been and will remain our job security. So I hope that alleviates some concerns too.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathryn, for an absolutely great presentation. I can see one more question. I hope we can squeeze it in.
Do we, from Motion Master, can you
Yes.
bring that question back up again by any chance? I only got a chance to, something about marketing agencies.
Yes. Do you have any experience how it's influencing marketing agencies and their work output?
It varies by the marketing agency. That is on a client-by-client basis. They are also at different points on the spectrum that I mentioned. Some agencies are shifting over entirely to AI because they're just volume, get the work in, get the work out. Other agencies are boutique agencies. They want it carefully crafted, and you're going to have everybody in between. So yeah, it does affect it. It's affecting them differently. That's where you're going to have to talk to your particular marketing agency client to see where they fall on that spectrum. So I saw another question come up and I didn't get a chance to look at what that was.
Do you have strategies for getting the AI to write in the same tone of voice and style as your own writing?
Yes. One of the ways to do that is to show it prior examples of the writing that you're trying to emulate. So for instance, one of my big assignments in 2023 was completely revamping a website with many pages on it. We weren't using AI for that. But if I was going to use AI for that, what I could do is I could say, here is a web address, a URL for this page. I want my new output to have the same tone, the same voice, the same length, the same verbiage as this one, and give it that URL. The different tools will have you format that in different ways, but each tool allows you to do that. Same thing with if I just wrote something on my own, say, I actually use it sometimes to create poetry for myself when I need to be cheered up. And I recently transitioned from one violin to another. I'm a violin player. So I had it write some poetry based on violins. And I had it write one poem about an old violin. And it was really sad, by the way. It almost made me cry. And I was like, okay, now take this poem, write a poem about a new violin using the same tone, the same rhythm, the same, all the same characteristics, the same length as this one you just created. I ended up having it do 4 different poems that look like they were written almost in one single stream of consciousness. So you can put your own work into the prompt, reference that work, and say, here, create something new based on this work. And that's how you have it match. But you have to tell it, match the tone, match the audience, match the level of reading difficulty, whatever the criteria are that you're trying to emulate.
Kathryn, do we have time for one more question?
We do.
We have a question from
Hey, if you're
Marianne.
hanging in there, I'll hang in there. This is something that I want people to go away knowing what they needed to know from this session. So by all means.
Perfect. Has AI meant that clients try to negotiate down your freelance rate because they think the job will take you less time?
Yes, absolutely. That is one of the big problems with this. And that's part of why I hammer on the fact checking taking time and the familiarity being an issue. Can I spit out AI generated content about EV sales really quickly? Yeah, because I've been doing that for years now. Can I generate or can I put out AI generated content on, say, I don't know, new tax law? Oh my God, no. I'd be researching things until the sun burned out because I don't know that. You have got to push back for clients that are trying to knock your rate down for any reason, but especially for this. All they've heard is that AI is going to save them time. They don't have any information to the contrary. When we become the experts in the room, it's not enough to say it's going to take longer. You can give them examples of why it's going to take longer, how it's going to take longer. So for instance, let's say that I was doing an environmental site assessment and some client wanted me to just auto-generate it. I could say, okay, I'm going to need to upload dozens of reports. I'm going to need to upload dozens of interviews and factual data. And then it's going to give me a draft copy. I'm going to then have to go through the draft copy, sentence by sentence, factoid by factoid, verify everything. The only thing it's doing is writing plausible sentences. I'm going to have to go check every single one of them. So yeah, my rate is still going to be X amount. And if they don't like that, they have a choice. Work with you, work with somebody else. You can honestly say, if you work with somebody who doesn't fact check, you will pay for it later in terms of liability, incorrect statements to the public, consumer complaints. There was a really famous case where one of the American Airlines, I don't remember which one, in their AI generated chatbot accidentally promoted sales rates for flights that were an order of magnitude less than what they should have been. That did go to court, and the court found in favor of the consumer. That airline had to honor all of those tickets because it was an official channel giving an official piece of information that just happened to be wrong. So when you talk to clients, say, these are all the ways that it can cost you. Which is more affordable? Losing, the dollars for this assignment that you would have paid anyway 2 years ago versus losing the customer that you're trying to win or that you're trying to keep. Let them do that math. A lot of them will come back and say, oh my God, okay, forget I ever asked. So that's how you can have that conversation.
Let's remember that Kathryn is back next week for another episode of the series where we're going to talk a little bit more about some more practical examples. And if you like it and if you have more questions and if these sessions have inspired you, then we can also do one more in 2025 because I've seen Kathryn's materials. She has tons of them. So I think we can easily do episode 3 and even episode 4. So just let us know on Slack if there is something in particular that you would like to find out. And in the meantime, thank you very much. Thank you, Kathryn. That has been absolutely great. Thank you.
You are very welcome.
Joining. And see you next Wednesday, hopefully.
Yes. See you next Wednesday, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.